Good afternoon. At the risk of disappointing everyone, I don't have any opening comments, so Matt.
I don't know. Disappointing us.
That was a bit facetious on my part, perhaps.
Okay. All right. So let's just start in the Middle East. One, can you tell us what you're expecting out of this meeting from Dermer and the Secretary?
Yeah, so later this afternoon, the Secretary will meet with Ron Dermer, Minister for Strategic Affairs for the government of Israel, and Saki Hanegbi, the National Security Advisor. He will discuss our ongoing work to try to reach a ceasefire that will secure the release of all hostages, would surge humanitarian assistance. They will discuss the situation in the north of Lebanon, or I'm sorry, in the north of Israel along the border with Lebanon. They will discuss our ongoing work, even absent trying to secure a ceasefire, to get humanitarian assistance into Gaza, and work that needs to be done to accelerate and improve that process, among, of course, a host of other issues that we discuss every time we meet with people from the government of Israel.
Okay. Well, when it relates to the quote unquote north of Lebanon,
Israel.
I know the north of Israel, yes. But you want to talk about the north
south of Lebanon?
We can talk about the north of Lebanon.
Sure.
If you want.
You can probably tell me about your trips to it. I'm sure you've been.
let's talk about the north of Israel on the Lebanese border. What is the situation there, as you understand it? Is there some kind of operation that's going to be mounted anytime soon? And if there is, what do you think of it?
So we have made quite clear that we do not want to see escalation of this conflict. Hezbollah has increased the number of cross-border attacks over the past few weeks. You've seen dramatic attacks targeting civilian communities. Matt, I hate to interrupt. There's a big cockroach on the wall over your head there, so maybe need a. We'll defer that to. It's not no insecticide or roachicide in the briefing, Matt.
I'll go get it as soon as you finish.
Yeah, I'm sorry to be distracted, but it's a rather large one.
Do I have to get rid of it now?
No. Let me go ahead and finish. We've seen a dramatic increase in attacks across the border. I shouldn't have said anything because now the room's going to have a hard time focusing on the very important messages I have to deliver here. Back to where we were. Back to where we were. We've been extremely concerned about the situation in the north of Israel. As I said, we don't want to see the conflict escalate. We have seen a dramatic increase in strikes by Hezbollah across the border, targeting Israeli villages, civilian infrastructure. And so we have been pursuing a diplomatic resolution to try to make clear that there should be no further escalation, and that's what we'll continue to pursue.
Well, yeah, but I mean, have you told them, the Israelis or the Lebanese, that have you told them anything?
So we've had intensive conversations with both governments about this. In our conversations with the government of Israel, which I'll speak to, and I'm sure the Secretary will go over with the two representatives from the government who are here today, we have made clear that our preference is to see a diplomatic resolution, and they have said to us that they want to see a diplomatic resolution to this conflict, and that's what we're going to continue to try to pursue.
Have the Israelis told you that they're about to launch some kind of a strike? And
they have not. Solves that problem.
Right. I mean, is that
I'm not gonna engage in any metaphors related here. I think where we're gonna.
No, well, I mean, so have you told the Israelis that you're going to that you will support them or help them if they decide to go in?
We have made clear that we want to see a diplomatic resolution.
That's not what I'm asking.
I think I will leave it at that.
All right. Thanks.
Yeah, Michelle.
After Mr. Hochstein's visit to Israel and Lebanon, is it fair to say that the diplomatic solution has failed?
No, I don't think so. I think we continue to pursue very active diplomacy to try to keep this conflict from escalating. You've heard me say this before, and I'll say it again because it remains the case. The best way to unlock the possibility of a resolution along the Israel-Lebanese border would be achieving a ceasefire in Gaza. And we continue to actively pursue a ceasefire in Gaza, primarily to alleviate the suffering of the Palestinian people in Gaza and to secure the return of hostages. But a very important side effect we assess would be making it much easier to achieve a ceasefire and diplomatic resolution along the Israel-Lebanon border. That said, we're not waiting for a ceasefire in Gaza. We're continuing to pursue diplomacy because it's important to do. But again, it's very difficult to reach such a resolution while the conflict in Gaza continues at the pace it is today.
And do you have any comments on Hezbollah Secretary General's speech yesterday and his threat to Cyprus? And did the Secretary discuss this topic with Cyprus foreign minister in their call yesterday?
So the meeting that he had with the governor of Cyprus was actually 2 days ago. So it's before the speech the Hezbollah speech that you referred to. So no, they obviously didn't discuss it because it hadn't happened yet. But obviously those comments are extremely unproductive, and Hezbollah should cease making threats against anyone. And our preference would be for Hezbollah to pursue a diplomatic resolution. I think that's the most productive, and certainly making threats at other countries that aren't involved in this conflict at all are not a productive step for them to be taking.
Thank you.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just to keep on the Lebanon border issue. Is it fair to say that this has now become like a greater focus of your diplomacy, like in the meetings this afternoon, than the situation in Gaza? This seems to have, really heightened in terms of the rhetoric coming from both sides. Do you see this as a sort of the priority is now avoiding a broader conflict in the north?
No, they continue to be equally important priorities, and they have been from the beginning. We have been incredibly focused on the situation in Gaza since right after October 7th. But if you go back and look at what the secretary said in his first visit to the region, and what we said in really every trip, keeping the conflict from escalating has been one of our overriding strategic goals. And there have been times when it looked like there was more of a chance of the conflict escalating than others. Obviously, we had the time when there was direct fire against the state of Israel from inside Iran. We've seen the pace of attacks across the Lebanese border kind of rise and fall over time. But that overriding strategic objective has been there from the beginning for us. We continue to focus on both. This is not what you were saying, but I would just say that the number of questions we get about any one topic is not always indicative of the actual work that's going on inside the government. We continue to work to pursue a ceasefire. There are conversations going on between our government and the governments of Israel, Egypt, and Qatar about how best to achieve that ceasefire in a way that protects Israel's security interests, gets the hostages home, alleviates the suffering of the Palestinian people. But no, I wouldn't rank them in any kind of order.
And also on the relationship with the Israeli government, there's been this fallout from the video that Prime Minister Netanyahu made talking about what Secretary Blinken said to him in their meeting. There's obviously the administration has spoken about this, and said some parts of it are not true. I just wanted to get your response because there's the latest comment from the Prime Minister. He's saying, he's willing to absorb personal attacks. He calls them personal attacks, apparently in a reference to the way that the administration has responded to this video, in order to get the weapons that Israel needs for its survival. So, yeah, how do you respond to this kind of, there seems to be a continuing discord between the way you're talking about this and specifically on the issue of whether you're providing Israel with everything it needs?
So I'm not exactly sure what the Prime Minister is talking about or what he was trying to accomplish. All I can tell you is what the Secretary told the Prime Minister directly in his meeting in Israel last week, which is that our commitment to Israel's security is sacrosanct. We have proved that not just with words, but with deeds. And I don't think it's productive to engage in an intense public back and forth about this. So we will just let our actions continue to speak for themselves as they have since October 7th.
Yeah. Staying on Lebanon, you and other U.S. officials have made clear that you don't want a second front to open, but how likely at this stage do you believe that a new confrontation between Hezbollah and Lebanon and Israel?
I'm not going to give you any kind of assessment of likelihood. I will say it is an intense concern of ours, has been for some time. as I said, there are times where we have been more concerned about it. It has never gone away as a concern, but whenever you see an increase in strikes across the border, that magnifies our concern at any given moment. So of course we have intense concerns about it right now, which is why we are pursuing diplomacy to try to achieve a resolution.
A U.S. official told us today that Israel hasn't come close to achieving their stated objective of destroying Hamas in Gaza. Its defense minister made similar comments publicly. Does the U.S. believe that Israel is militarily capable of succeeding militarily against Hezbollah with or without American support?
Against Hezbollah, I just don't want to offer any kind of an assessment about a conflict that we hope never happens in the first place.
Well, you may be more persuasive if you point out that it's not one that Israel.
We have conversations about that sort of thing behind closed doors, but I don't think it's helpful for me to offer that kind of
and then
assessment publicly.
just because so much of this has also been predicated or has been accompanied by the U.S. diplomatic push to achieve a ceasefire in Gaza, where do those talks stand? Have mediators re-engaged with Hamas to get a read on what the bridgeable gaps are at this stage?
We are engaging in conversations, as I said a moment ago, with the governments of Egypt, Israel, and Qatar about how to move forward, responding to the proposal that Hamas made last week, to try to come to a resolution that is consistent with what the United Nations Security Council endorsed and what countries across the world have signed up to. But I don't think at this point it's helpful for me to talk about those conversations in detail.
Just to put that there's been no re-engagement with Hamas, either their political.
I don't want to get into that publicly right now.
I have one more on Ukraine that I'll.
Okay, we'll come back.
While we're on Hezbollah, can I just ask if you can kind of give us an up-to-date assessment as to where the U.S., how the U.S. is viewing Iran's backing of Hezbollah at this moment in time? Has it increased? Is it the same steady state that it's been? Just where that stands.
So I can't give you a minute-to-minute assessment, but Iran has been one of the primary backers of Hezbollah going back years, as they are a primary backer of Hamas going back years and other terrorist organizations in the region, and that has in no way changed.
Okay, and so there's no further support that they're providing to them.
They are providing ongoing support to them at all times. And what I mean is I can't give you a daily kind of run by run of what they're doing, but they have been one of Hezbollah's chief backers going back years, and that hasn't changed. It's been consistent. It's one of the reasons we've been so concerned about Iran's destabilizing activities.
And then just one question on the secretary previewed last week that the department was going to be rolling out plans for day after plans in Gaza. I just wonder if you can give us an update as to where those efforts stand, how many plans you guys are going to roll out, if a few weeks is still kind of the time frame that we're dealing with here.
I think I'm going to have to give you the stay tuned answer on this one. There are conversations we are engaging with our partners in the region about. We do look forward to moving those conversations forward. And as the secretary said, having something to say, but I'm not ready to preview it today.
Can I follow up?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. Just where you were responding to Olivia, I guess, on the path forward. I mean, according to political, U.S. officials see no path forward to resolving the Gaza war anytime soon or coming up with a ceasefire that can endure. So I just, want perhaps if you elaborate on this. Where are we with the talks?
First of all, I have no idea who those U.S. officials are. Okay. As I've said on previous occasions, right. Thousands of people who serve in the government have who are U.S. officials, and they have a wide diversity of opinions. Right. They're not all the opinions that you see quoted from U.S. officials are not universally shared. I think everyone understands that. I will say that we very much see a path forward to a ceasefire. There was a way to get a ceasefire last week, in fact, even before last week, right. If Hamas had agreed to the proposal that Israel had put forward and that had been endorsed, as I said, by the United Nations Security Council and countries around the world. And had Hamas accepted that proposal, we would have a ceasefire today. Mm-hmm. And the suffering of the people inside Gaza could have been dramatically alleviated, and we've seen a massive surge in humanitarian assistance. So it remains incredibly unfortunate that they didn't accept that proposal, but we think they ought to accept that. They ought to agree to a ceasefire. We are engaged in conversations with the mediators about how to get to a ceasefire that protects Israel's security interests, that alleviates the suffering of the Palestinian people. We very much do think it's possible to achieve one. But as you heard the secretary say, just because it's possible doesn't mean that we will get there. But we're going to keep trying.
Well, since you mentioned humanitarian aid, I mean, today marks the 43rd day of the closure of the Rafah crossing and Kerem Abu Salam and so on. There's virtually no aid, and the pier is not functioning. Obviously, the situation is very dire. Why can't the U.S. put forth an idea or a way to increase under the current circumstances before you even get to a ceasefire? Because the situation is very bad. I mean, the people, literally, children are starving.
We are absolutely,
death.
we are, sorry to interrupt you. We are absolutely putting forward ways to improve the humanitarian situation in Gaza. And it was because of U.S. advocacy that we saw Israel institute these humanitarian pauses that they announced on Sunday or Monday. We continue to engage with our partners on the ground about how to increase the number of trucks that go in. But more importantly, right now, because there are a number of trucks that have made it to Kerem Shalom that are sitting in Kerem Shalom, unable to then distribute the aid that they're holding inside Gaza. We're working for ways to resolve the security and logistical challenges that made it difficult to distribute aid inside Gaza. We continue to be incredibly focused on that as well. And I should say, as well as reaching an agreement between Israel and in Egypt about how to safely reopen the Rafah border crossing.
Although Israel has destroyed it completely, they're saying that it is now rendered completely inoperable. But let me ask you about the what Navi Pillay, the chairperson of the Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the occupied Palestinian territory, announced yesterday that Israel did indeed commit war crimes. Do you have any comment? Have you seen the report? And do you have any comment on that?
We did see the report. We saw that Israel said it is reviewing the report. I can just give you what our assessment has been. You saw us put out a report last month where we said it is reasonable to assess that there have been violations of international humanitarian law, and we're continuing to look at specific incidents to draw final determinations.
Thank you.
Yeah.
On Iran. Pardon me. There's reporting that Iran's undergoing a major expansion at the Fordo facility that would triple production of enriched uranium there. I wanted to get your comment on that. And a separate reporting that the Iranians could now be using computer modeling that could be used in their development of nuclear weapons.
So with respect to the first question, Iran continues to expand its nuclear program in ways that have no credible, peaceful purpose. We remain deeply concerned with Iran's nuclear activities and will continue to vigilantly monitor them. As we said in a joint statement we put out with the G7 on Friday, Iran must cooperate with the IAEA without further delay. As it relates to this report on computer modeling, I've seen the article. I'm not going to comment, obviously, on intelligence matters. As you have heard us say before, we do not see indications that Iran is currently undertaking the key activities that would be necessary to produce a testable nuclear device. But of course, this is something we continue to monitor very closely. Yeah. Oh, Gita, go ahead. Yes. Yeah. Stick with it.
Thank you. Earlier, when you were talking about Hezbollah, its activities, you referenced Iran, its support for Hezbollah terrorism. Canada just designated the IRGC as a terrorist group. I was wondering if you have any comments.
So we welcome the decision by Canada to designate the IRGC as a terrorist group. It's something that the United States has done. The IRGC's terrorism and lethal plotting threatens the entire world, and we stand ready to provide support as other countries consider designating the IRGC as a terrorist organization.
How can you support other countries in doing this?
Well, we can provide information to them about activities that they have undertaken. It's something we often do in sharing intelligence information and other information with our allies and partners about activities that we have seen any supporters of terrorism take around the world. Yeah, Tom.
Just to come back to the Netanyahu video, I mean, the White House has said today that what the Israeli Prime Minister said was, quote, incorrect. So I'm just trying to, there were a few things he said, but I'm trying to understand which part was incorrect.
So I think the point that is incorrect is that there are bottlenecks that need to be overcome. So obviously there is one shipment of high payload munitions that we have put under review, and that remains under review. That's not a bottleneck. That's a policy review. Other shipments of weapons have been moving regularly to Israel because we are committed to Israel's long-term defense. And that includes things that have nothing to do with the war in Gaza, but are capabilities related to Israel's long-term security, defending itself against, for example, the threat from Iran.
he also said that the secretary told him that the administration was working day and night to overcome the bottlenecks. Is that incorrect?
So I'm not going to get into a word for word parsing of what the prime minister said, because as I said a moment ago, I don't think it's really productive to have this kind of conversation in public. But there are no bottlenecks, and the secretary made clear in his conversation that we are continuing to flow security assistance, despite other than the one that is publicly known that we have made clear to them and we've said publicly are under review. Other things continue to flow, so there just are no bottlenecks.
So he didn't say that the administration was working to overcome that particular block of the £2,000 bombs.
No,
he didn't say that. Okay.
Can I just follow up on that, Tom?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
You say that, it's not for public exchanges back and forth and all this, but I mean, the White House this morning went quite strongly against Netanyahu's comments. And so is the State Department not at the same line?
No,
with the White House?
I made clear that I didn't think the comments, that I didn't know what the prime minister was talking about or what he was trying to accomplish. And I'm happy to make the record clear, as I think the White House was doing. But none of us think it's productive to have an extended public debate about it. That's not so daylight between me and the White House. I think they would agree with that. But of course, when it comes to defending our record, we're going to defend our record.
It seems you have a little bit of a different take than the White House on this.
Not at all. Not at all.
Why didn't you tell them that?
No. The
No?
White House? We have the exact same.
No, not the White House, the Israelis.
I think I just did.
Did you? Did you?
I think I just did.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, you're saying it's not productive to have a back and forth, but you are having a back and forth with them right now. So what purpose do you think that serves? Because
I don't think it serves any purpose. That is my overall point.
You could sort of not engage with it.
Hold on.
And you're still signing the checks.
No,
right? So,
I don't think it serves any purpose. But if someone comes out and says something about the actions by the United States government that are not accurate, we're going to correct the record. Don't think it's necessarily. Hold on. Don't think it's necessarily productive to have this exchange in public, especially about things that we don't understand and can't comprehend because they don't reflect reality. But we will defend our record 100%.
So you're saying it's not productive to have the exchange in public, but you will still have the exchange in public.
I'm saying we'll defend our record when we have to. Yeah.
So I mean, I'm sorry, but you have daily contacts with the Israelis. So what are you saying? Netanyahu, the prime minister, is lying or not saying correct things?
As I just said, we don't understand what he was talking about when he comes to talking about bottlenecks, because we continue to provide outside of this one shipment that is under review. We continue to provide them the equipment they need to defend themselves.
And his staff hasn't explained to you what he was talking about, since you're in daily contact with them?
So we have very direct exchanges with them. They can be quite candid at times, and I think I'll leave it at that. Alex, go ahead.
Thank you, Matt. I'll shift to Ukraine, but before that, anything you can tell us about another arrested U.S. Russian citizen, Ksenia Karelina, who is facing trial in Yekaterinburg. Basically, Russia is trying to jail another American citizen for experiencing her First Amendment rights in the U.S.
Yeah. So first of all, as we always make clear, we take seriously our commitment to assist U.S. citizens abroad and provide all appropriate assistance. Oftentimes, there's a limit to what I can say for privacy reasons, just based on the law, and that is the case here. I will say generally, when a U.S. citizen is detained abroad, consular officers seek to provide them with all appropriate assistance. Russia has long taken the position that when it comes to dual nationals, they don't have to respond to those requests for appropriate assistance. But that said, we continue to actively seek access to any individuals in this situation. And then I do have to just reiterate, as I always do in these situations, that no American citizen for any reason should travel to Russia. And I know this is sometimes comes down to a very painful choice for Americans who have family members in Russia, sometimes family members with health problems that they want to see, but you run a tremendous risk by traveling to Russia of being detained, being imprisoned, being convicted. And so we continue to make clear to every American, do not, for any reason, travel to Russia.
Thank you. Moving to Ukraine, on today's decision to reprioritize arms sales to Ukraine, as you can tell us about what triggered the decision.
So we have been engaged with in conversations with the government of Ukraine about what they need. We've seen the Russian military targeting Ukrainian cities. We've seen them targeting energy infrastructure, making clear that they want to turn the lights off and turn the heat off when winter rolls back around. And so it has been clear to us that we need to do something to increase Ukraine's air defense capabilities, and we have been engaged with our allies and partners about how to do that. That includes sourcing additional systems from around the world to improve Ukraine's air defense, but it also includes supplying the systems that they have already been provided. And so that's the decision that the president took, which is to resequence some of the deliveries of Patriot interceptors, the missiles that go up and intercept missiles that have been fired by Russia, to resequence them from other countries because of the dire need that Ukraine has and the dire threat that Ukraine faces, to make sure that Ukraine is getting what it needs now to defend itself from this intense Russian air bombardment.
Is it fair also to expect reprioritizing F-16 training slot?
So I'm not going to get into any future decisions, but the secretary has always made clear that we always adapt and adjust our policy based on the battlefield realities. And so we look at what Ukraine needs, and then we look at how we can meet those needs, whether through actions that the United States is taking or whether actions that our allies and partners are taking. And we look to provide them the best equipment, the best training that we can, as quickly as we can provide it. And when the United States can't do it, or when there's another country that can do it better, we look to another country to do it.
Thank you. One more from me on Putin's trip to North Korea. Any concern on your end, first of all, its potential implications for Ukraine, and also any concern on your end that unified UN response to North Korea's nuclear issues might be eroding?
So a few things. First of all, on the deepening cooperation between Russia and the warning about this for some time. You recall that we first made public that the DPRK was providing Russia with military equipment that would show up on the battlefield in Ukraine, has showed up on the battlefield in Ukraine. We've seen them provide thousands of artillery shells and other munitions that they have been using to shell Ukrainian cities, Ukrainian villages, and kill Ukrainian civilians. We have been taking this quite seriously. And I will say it's one of the reasons why we have been prioritizing strengthening our ties with allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific throughout this administration, including through the historic trilateral agreement we had with the Republic of Korea and Japan, through AUKUS, through other work, because of the potential for deepening cooperation between these two countries. That said, it should also be concerning for your second question, which is anyone who cares about maintaining peace and stability on the Korean Peninsula. If you look at what was contained in the agreements that they made public, it would include Russia violating UN Security Council resolutions that it voted for. So it continues to be a problem, and we're going to work on it with our allies and partners, including those in the region.
And just I said it was final, but that being said, any connection between
I think I can go to someone else. You said it was final already.
As the secretary's trip to Vietnam and Putin's visit, any connection between the two?
Between the secretary's trip?
No, Assistant Secretary.
Oh, the Assistant Secretary. Oh, Assistant Secretary Crittenbrink, who is there. No, we were planning that trip well before this visit by President Putin. Whoever.
No, that's good.
Decide amongst
Sounds good.
yourselves. I don't know.
All right, thank you. All right, so Putin's visit to Vietnam comes after President Biden's visit last year, where the U.S.-Vietnam relationship was upgraded to comprehensive strategic partnership. I was wondering what your take is on Putin's trip to Vietnam.
So obviously, Russia and Vietnam have had long-standing close ties. That said, we expect that any country, when it engages in